norms and stereotypes to making sure that the butts are white. Boy, girl, mom and dad want grown-up time, you're going mad. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.
Okay, welcome back, you guys. Part 2 of 2 on the weight of invisible work. We're so glad you're back, but if you're listening to this before you listen to part 1, please go back, listen to part 1, and it'll catch you up.
Yeah, it'll really help if you listen to the first part.
It's a great conversation. We hope you enjoy it. Let us know what you think.
Let us know what you think.
Now,
thanks for listening.
Sit back and enjoy the show.
Yeah. Go.
Are we going to address the elephant in the room?
Which elephant? That was a good elephant. What elephant? The popsicle stains on my shirt?
Well, no, actually I can't really see them. What I was going to say, just to make it more relatable for everybody here, is that we took a 5-hour break in between. Do we want to address that? Yeah. So if you're watching, you'll probably see that there's different lighting, and maybe I look a little sweatier. I just got back from the Getty Villa. We had to take a break in between our recording just because we ran out of time. So we're here. We're not perfect, but we're trying. And that's what Boy, Girl, Mom, and Dad is about, right?
Yeah. We're trying.
Okay. So you are ready to divide the mental load, whether you read the book Fair Play or just wanting to get down and discuss the invisible work that you have in your household. We made a list of things to kind of remember and keep in mind as you are discussing this with your spouse or roommate or whatever. So the first thing is remember that equity is what you're going for, not equality. You want fair play, not equal play. It's not even split. So say there's 100 cards of things that you're dividing, or 100 tasks rather, that you're dividing between the two of you. It's not 50-50. It could be 80-20. It could be 70-30. Let's see if I can do all my math right. 60-40, But, some of those tasks may take longer, and you could be totally happy with your 80 tasks versus the 20, and it kind of equal out time-wise. So you're just trying to figure out what's best for you, and there's not a cookie-cutter answer.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. One way to think about it also is what do you like to do? We've talked about this before in a couple episodes. When the twins were newborn, I preferred to change the diapers and Nick preferred to put them in their car seat. So that's how we manage stopping on a road trip. It's okay, you get the baby out of the car seat, hand to me. I will change the diaper. And by the time I'm done with that, you can hand me the other one and you can put them in the car seat. So it doesn't have to be, there might be something you both don't enjoy doing, but if you enjoy doing something I enjoy cooking, Nick does too, but fitting with our schedules, it's a little bit easier for me to do it during the day. And so kind of think about what you like. It doesn't have to be your passion area is trash, but if that's something that you want to do, you want to take out the trash, it's a nice way to get your steps during the day and take the trash out. Hey, find what works for you.
So when you say think about what you want to do, what I think more specifically what you're saying is pick the cards that represent what you want to do, right?
Yeah. Or what's important to you, rather. You don't have to necessarily like it, but what's important to you. And you like how you do it maybe versus the other person, but also, again, what's important to you at the end of the day.
Yeah. And you might be surprised what your partner is completely happy that you're taking from them and didn't know that you enjoyed.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the next thing I wrote down to think about is just a question of whose responsibility is it? And if you read the book Fair Play, there's even a game you can do to where they give you the cards. You have to think about all the little things again that you may not think about, which is why it's invisible work. So birthday cards, for family members, birthday presents, Christmas presents, those types of things. One way that I've heard of people liking to divide things up is your family versus my family, not in a divisive way, but okay, you're responsible for all of your family's gifts. We're going to talk about it. If you need help with it, I'm happy to spitball some ideas with it, but it's your responsibility to get them and be within our decided budget. You're responsible for scheduling your family's get-togethers, that type of thing. So it could be that is an easy and kind of obvious way to split, but I just know a lot of people, I'm not talking about myself here, I know it may sound like it, but who are annoyed that they have to do everything, including their spouse's gifts and things like that, and having to remember that. And it is a lot. It is a big, not burden. I think it's fun, but it is kind of a big burden. And so much so, in fact, in Fair Play, they give it its own card. It's separate from, a kid birthday party thing, or like a friend, like family gifts and remembering their special days is a card in and of itself. And I think a really easy way to split it is to do family and family.
So when you say whose responsibility is it, are you saying assign it to somebody whose responsibility it should be? Because I feel like asking, if we're assuming most things are already distributed, we're not going to get many answers from asking it. I don't think that's what you're recommending, but that's what I'm trying. Can you be more specific?
Yeah, I think what I mean by whose responsibility is it is what makes sense, or whose responsibility does it make sense to be.
So like who should hold the card?
Yeah, but in this specifically, it's a little bit more personal than, who's taking out the trash. I was trying to think like, not whose responsibility should it be, as in you don't want to do it, but also when you're deciding these, I feel like that is a deciding factor of where it makes sense. And as far as family get-togethers and gifts and all that, I feel like if it's overwhelming one person, a really easy split is to just say you handle your side of the family and I'll handle mine.
Sure, I understand.
Am I explaining it any better?
No, it's making more sense to me now. You already said this, but I don't think that is everybody's strategy, but you're right. It is a strategy. Also in the book, they talked about a card being like birthday cards, right?
Exactly.
Pun intended. But for everybody. So in that instance, they're not splitting by family. Not to say you can't, but I understand what you're saying now. So you're saying divide, or rather identify the cards, not only based on how you want to split them, but based on like who should have, I don't know, should maybe is the word, right? Like, yeah, it is should for your family. I don't mean to say should like, the wife should always do the birthday cards or the husband should always do the trash. I mean, like, if it in your family does feel that way or feels the opposite or whatever, lean into that, I think is what you're saying.
Yeah. And I think other examples besides birthday cards and things like that would be laundry. I know plenty of couples who they are responsible for doing their own laundry and their partner is responsible for doing theirs. So it's not a joint effort in that part. I think whatever works for you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We've talked about this one before. I can't remember which episode it was, but don't keep the score. So we've said this before in how we verbalize thank you to each other. So, hey, thanks for taking out the trash. Like Nick very well could hold the take out the trash card, but I'm still, if I see it done, I'm going to say thank you for it. And voicing those things, I think, lower the resentment and they make people feel appreciated, even if it's something they're, quote, supposed to be doing. Along those same lines, I don't know, I feel like trash is a good example for us because I would say you probably do it most of the time, but I have absolutely no problem doing it myself. And so it's kind of one of those things where if I see it, I'm going to do it. And it makes me think of, sorry, it makes me think of one of the places we frequented growing up in Dallas area is a place called Snuffers. It's a hamburger restaurant and they have really good cheese fries. But you kind of had a waitress or a waiter assigned to your table, but if a different waiter walked by, they would 100% get you something. They would be topping off your water. They would be, filling up your Coke or whatever like that. And it was kind of a joint effort in that, it's kind of a joint effort is what I'm trying to say. And so go ahead.
Two things. One, every restaurant should work that way, in my opinion. Great example. Two, another reason that's a great example is because it goes back to the accountability point. So I 100% agree with what you're saying. I'm just restating it. So the server whose table it is, they are accountable for making sure that the drinks are full and that those people are happy, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean other people can't help them. It just means they're the one responsible for it. Right. So if it fails, it's their fault. But if it succeeds, it's okay to be a shared and distributed thing. So to your point, if you walk by the trash, even though I'm the one accountable for taking it out, if you have a second and want to do it, you're not hurting me by doing it. You just get to rest in knowing it's not your responsibility and you're not accountable for that piece.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to mention that because the card should make your life, or dividing it up should make your life easier. It shouldn't make it harder. And I could see in some instances if there was already a resentment there, if like, he can't, because An example of how people would get mad at each other, and I think the weaponized incompetence that we kind of talked about, mentioned earlier, that we will go into later, is like just letting the trash fill and just not doing anything about it because you don't want to do it and you don't care, and you're essentially trying to bother the other person. I won't say the word hurt, but I do think you're trying to bother them, and also you just don't want to do it yourself. And so by having the cards, it is not saying you cannot help them or should not help the other person. It's more so just to make everyone's life, just a little bit easier. I think an example that they give in the book also is like, it's okay to lean on someone else to have a part of your task within the card completed by them or helped by them, but you need to try to do it, one, gracefully and thankfully, and two, do it in a way that's hopefully not last minute, and if it is, not be upset at them if they can't help you. So that was the example about the glue in the book of like, oh, can you please swing by the store and get glue on the way home? And the answer was they couldn't, and then they were mad because the other person couldn't get the glue, but it also wasn't their responsibility. So don't be mad when someone can't help.
Yeah, that's good. I think hopefully there's like some rest in knowing whether it's your responsibility or not. So if you want to use trash as your example, like me seeing the full trash should trigger, oh yeah, that's the thing I own, I should go do it, right? And you seeing it not as the owner, you don't have to do it even if it's full, right? It's my card. B, you're helping me a little bit if you do it. So it's like, it should be a little less of a source of anxiety and anger, to your point.
The other thing I wrote down in regard to this section is that and I struggle with this, is why I wrote it down, is don't do it just because you don't want to do something else for yourself. So for me, I'm like, oh, I really need to sit down and write this blog post or whatever, but I'm just going to go around and do all these other things that maybe aren't my responsibility. And in some cases, I do think a clean area helps me focus, and a dirty area, not dirty, but messy area, I can't focus as well. But there are some times where I would just I would so much rather not do what I'm supposed to do, and then I start doing other things, and it's just detrimental to myself in most cases.
So you're saying
my point is
focus
that
on your own cards.
Yeah. Don't have blinders on, but yeah, focus on your own cards.
Yeah.
Trust the other person. Okay, another thing that I think is cool and a good idea, not original, but just get your kids involved. So this was something that I read in Hunt, Gather, Parent, which is a book that I've recommended on here before. Still recommend it. It's great. But giving a child a role, not a chore. So I saw this recently on Somewhat Simple Living on Instagram, and I'll link the post for you. But basically, don't say, oh, okay, little Jimmy, it's your job to empty the cat litter. You can give him the role of zookeeper. And so he has to feed, he has to do the litter box. Maybe he has to go pick up the dog poop in the backyard. Maybe you get him a cool vest that he can wear as while he does it, depending on how old he is. And another example was a cheerleader. So this person writes or draws cards or encouragement for people, whether it's their birthday or maybe they have a test coming up. And so it's not just...
That's cool.
It's just like, I don't know, it's all encompassing because you want them to take pride in what they're doing. Everyone contributes, everyone thrives.
Yeah, it's cool. I like that. I hadn't heard that before.
Well, and what I was drawing in from Hunt, Gather, Parent is that they recommend, or the author recommends, basically letting your child do everyday activities with you. Don't just be like, oh, go watch TV. And I will say there are instances where it's like, okay, I need to get down and dirty. I need to do this right now and I can't have any distractions. But for the most part, there are times where okay, yeah, it's going to take me longer to clean the toilet with them, but I'm going to let them, drop the pot in and wash it all around because they're interested in it now. There will become a time where you've kind of missed the window and then they won't really want to help with housework. But if you do it now, it kind of can instill for later on.
I'm looking at the post you linked. I don't know if you've already said that. You linked a post or you're going to, where it talks about that. But I'm looking at the roles: adventure planner, weather watcher, housekeeper, cheerleader. These are cool.
Yeah, I really liked it. Kind of obviously it's the same section, but kind of along the same lines. Also, see where technology can help you. So, see where technology can help you accomplish these tasks in your home. We've mentioned Hearth Display. It is a hardware that sits on your wall, but connects as a software to your phone, and is a calendar, and you can assign
Device with an app.
tasks.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's a great way to have technology basically connect everybody in your home and assign roles and things like that. It could be as simple as a shared Google Note. Nick and I have one of those for our grocery list, and we write on it whenever we need to buy something, so that if one of us is at the store or is going to place an order, we can kind of look at that and be like, okay, what do we need? We use the reminders for things to get done there too. So there are a lot of ways that technology can help you kind of figure it out.
Yeah, use it. You said Google. I think you didn't mean to say Google. We use the Apple Note.
Thank you. I'm at Apple.
It's okay. Google has the same platform in a different name, but yeah, we use the Apple Note one.
Yeah. You mentioned this earlier, so I don't know if you want to talk about it, but don't forget to check in, revisit everything. I think weekly family meetings are great, but don't forget to check in on roles in that time, and don't be afraid to redeal the cards or readdress adoption. No, adaptation.
There it is. I didn't know where you were going. I just wanted to help.
Adaptation is key. You have to adapt to survive. So just because something works now doesn't mean that it is going to work later. And also don't be afraid to just stop, readdress, and figure it out. Because I mean, don't do it because you just want to get rid of a card that you don't want to do. But if it doesn't make sense, try to prove your case.
Okay, so there's some guardrails that were set up in the book around this. You're right. But we haven't talked about it yet. So let me go over a few. So have a cadence where you set aside some time. Weekly is the recommendation, but you can do it bi-weekly. It depends on your schedule, whatever you want. Have a cadence where the purpose is to talk about how your distribution of tasks is going. It can be quick. If everything's going well, it's going to be quick, right? But just create a space that both of you can use where like, hey, I think our minimum standard of care is a little bit different for this thing, or I think we can increase it, decrease it, whatever. Or, hey, I'm noticing you're like not able to complete this card. Should we redeal it? Or is there some way I can help you or whatever? Like have that space to talk about it. The other rule in contrast to that rule is don't use the in the moment unless there's an emergency to have that conversation. So wait for the time that you've set aside to have these kinds of discussions, because they're not focused on shame and having people feel bad or having people feel like failures. The goal is to have a bit of a little retrospective time so that you can address those things free of shame, free of blame, and free of arguments, and free of the stress of in the moment, right? So like if I haven't taken out the trash yet, you know it's my card to hold. Maybe I haven't noticed it, whatever. I've walked by it a few times. It's frustrating you. Don't say anything. Don't get mad at me. If you want to help, like you said earlier, do it. Take it out, put it right next to the trash, and maybe that triggers me to remember, oh, I need to do that. But don't talk about it unless it's an emergency until we're at the time we have set aside to deal with it.
Do you remember that? I agree with everything you said. Do you remember the example in the book where the wife had been away on a business trip and her husband had texted her and said, oh, a homeless man like left his backpack or like some beer bottles in our front yard, and she was on a business trip and she came back and it was still there. So she was mad. She was like, you told me about it. You know that it's there and you're in here playing, I think it was video games or something like that. And you can't take the time to go and take it yourself. And she kind of did it in the moment there, which I not saying is right. I do understand. Because it's like, why didn't you just do it? So that was a poor example of doing it in the moment, because if she would have waited, it probably would have gone a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, that one's tough for me because there's no card for picking up something somebody else.
Unless it's like lawn maintenance. I don't know.
I mean, sure. Yeah. But, her getting mad about when it's done, to your point, getting mad and verbalizing it there, not the way it's recommended to be dealt with. I would also say that gets into the, like, he's not doing it the way you would expect it to be done, but you didn't verbalize your expectations either. So there's not a common minimum standard of care, right?
Yeah. Unmet expectations, which we talked about, is just a top contender for fights, or causes fights or can cause fights in a relationship. So if all of this is still not clear, or you just want to do the extra homework and look at some more examples, I found a video that backs this up on the Couples Counseling for Parents, which I love. If you don't follow it, you should, because I just really enjoy the things that they write. And it's about being the default parent. And it was a video actually for the non-default parent. And to define this, we've talked about it before, but the default parent is typically the person who is the one doing most of the housework or children's work. So it just kind of lands on them, which isn't bad. But if you're not helping them when you're off of work, that's a whole another issue, which is why it can be resentment can form. Anyway, my whole point is that it was a video for the non-default parent and said, partner doesn't want someone who helps, they want someone who predicts, someone who's proactive, who solves the problem ahead of time and makes a plan. And I don't know, it's just a good little listen if you still want, or you want some further information on it. The whole point really is that your partner does not need your help, they need a partnership. And it just goes into what's the difference of that, because there is a difference.
Yeah, so I think bringing it back to this subject of this book, like if you're using this system, it's supposed to alleviate a lot of that. But I would also say that like people trying to help shouldn't be minimized, right? So like I understand the concept of they don't need help, they need a proactive partner. But if like from a guy's perspective, if you see that your spouse needs help, trying to step in and help, even if it's not the best way for you, we're trying, so that's I
think there's a gray area.
Yeah.
But I think overall they're going to shift your mindset. And then also to your point, the person who's struggling at that point may not want your exact help or for you to take over. They may just want you to ask. So I think there is a gray area, but overall I feel like it's a good mindset to have.
Sure.
And since we're talking about time, I feel, and we're speaking a lot to the non-default parent here, I want to speak to the default parents and just say, remember that your time is worthy too. We've spoken on this before, but it's worthy. And I think back to having a conversation with a friend who had a business coach, and they were doing an introductory time for it, of like just to chat and see if they wanted to pursue this, mentorship together. And it came time to be over, and they're like, okay, well, we're running long, but or we're running over, we can just curb it here. I don't really want to, but we can. And the person, our friend, said like, oh, well, I have the time, I can stay on. And they're like, you have the time? Why didn't I had the 45-minute session open, why'd you book the 30? And they were like, oh, I was just trying to be nice and courteous. I know it's like a free session to try to like see if we want to work together. And they said, how many times have you shorted yourself of something because you were trying to be nice when someone's offering something to you? And so that can apply to a lot of things here. But I think for the default parent, like there are times when somebody is trying to help you, and it may not be in the way that you want to be helped, which is a whole different thing to address, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't take them up on their help or try to figure something out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
Just don't short yourself in general. And again,
well, I think there's two things there. There's accept help, and then also realize that what you need out of your time and how you distribute your time, you're worthy of making those decisions, and asking for what you need, right? If you have, to your example, if we ask for 45 minutes, it's, that's what we need, right? Doesn't mean we're always going to get it, but if we don't ask, we probably won't get it. So why not ask for the 45 minutes? If the service provider can't give it, they either shouldn't have put it on their calendar, or they can respond and say, I actually don't have that much time, but I can give you this. Then you can move forward, right?
I try to have that mindset in a lot of things. Like if I ask, then like, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? Or, if I do this, or if I take the chance, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? And a lot of it's like, not really anything. I mean, I don't really have anything to lose in this scenario. So I don't know.
I agree. You're like that for the most part. When people are involved, you tend to not want to hurt their feelings.
Yeah, that's true.
And you tend to set aside what you actually want to ask for to make sure they know you're not mad.
Yeah. No, you're right. I was thinking
I'm
more
not
so.
trying to criticize. I'm just
No.
saying you do take a lot of risks. That's separate. When other humans are involved, you're considerate of those humans more so than yourself in most
Yeah.
cases.
No, I think I align with our friend who booked a 30-minute session, even though they had time for the 45 because they were trying to be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And kind of just saying like you're worthy of the time and all of that. I found another video that somewhat relates, but I just wanted to bring it up because I thought it was important. It's from the Conscious Parenting Hub. And again, I'm going to link all these videos in the show notes. They're worth the watch. But it basically is saying your kids notice whenever you don't notice them or you notice them. And it was more so talking about technology. And, we end up with a phone just right in front of our face and it's in front of the kids and we may not be looking at them or we're halfway looking at them. And basically they at a young age they're willing to tell you like, hey, pay attention to me, but there will come a time when they won't. And so just remember that, and you can relate this even into like friendships and stuff. If like put down your phone, you're worthy of that, they're worthy of that, and kind of just making the most of the time. I know it's kind of a stretch of adding it in here, but I just liked it, so I wanted to include it.
Yeah, I mean, it relates to being worthy of your time and, expecting that others are worthy of yours too.
Yeah, because other people do notice, whether you have a watch and you're checking your watch or you're checking your email, which I check my email all the time. Do I need to do that? No. So just like find out what's important to you. Okay. So now we're into some very specific questions I asked on Instagram at boygirlmomdotcom to see if there's anything specific y'all wanted us to cover in this episode. And so I wrote that down. So one person wrote all things insurance, like they wanted to know how we divide up insurance.
Oh, what's the question is how we do or how we recommend it? Because those are different.
No, how we do.
So, okay, I'll answer with respect to this subject of the podcast first. I think that insurance can probably fall under like an insurance and life, or insurance and non-budgeting finance thing, like insurance and services or something. That can probably be a card. I could see another world in which the finance card or the budgeting card would include insurance and investing or whatever else. So there's ways you can split this up. We haven't tried the card system in full yet, so I wouldn't say we recommend one or the other. Right now, I'm the one that does the budgeting, most of the financial management, the investing, and the insurance. I don't know that we kind of understand that I do that, but we didn't have a card level discussion and decide that one day. It was kind of just, I was already doing it and was more comfortable with it, and you were kind of cool with it, I think.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason why you have it is because we're on your insurance. And so whenever I worked corporately, I was on my company or whoever I was working for as insurance. And so we kind of handled it separately then.
So for health insurance, that's true. But everything else is a joint policy.
True.
Bank accounts are joint. Everything else is joint. And even, you're my spouse on that policy, but you have your own. So it's just who the primary is. So you're not wrong. And I do think that's how it started. But it's not, I don't want to suggest that it's different. I would recommend you have the same policy. You're going to save a lot of money doing that, to have policies where you're both on them.
Yeah, and the other thing I will say is that Nick is very good at it. Not that I'm not good at it, but he's very diligent in getting us money that we're owed back or refusing to pay where we're not really required to. We're not just refusing.
See our episode about pushing back against your health insurance companies.
Nick has just saved us a lot of money.
A joke.
I know. There's just a lot of things you can do. You can question them.
I didn't mean to open the bag of worms. I'm
sorry.
Yeah, you're
right. because you've questioned it. They'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. And we're like, okay, here's money back. Like, yes, please. So my point is that you can question them on it and dive into what is actually on like the charge.
Yeah, don't be afraid I have a lot of thoughts on that. We'll go. This is a whole episode at least. We'll go. I don't mean to try and shut you up. I'm just saying you're right. Push back, but thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that.
You did so much. You did so much.
That way, but thank you.
We could actually have some funny stories about insurance too, just to make it feel all human.
I was thanking you for the budget piece. You said that you think I'm good at all of that kind of stuff, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah,
I was just talking about our insurance history. But
okay, great. So I heard more than just that, but still, thank you.
Okay, the next question. I hope that answered the insurance question. It's gnarly, but Got to do it. Remembering people if we run into them again. Okay, so I like to take notes.
Sorry, can you state the question?
Remembering people when we meet them and if we run into them again. Like, is there this was a question on how in regard to mental load, so I'm just assuming that it's about does one of you in the partnership try to remember and be like, oh yeah, you're this person? I'm
Okay.
just I'm assuming here. I
Okay.
haven't
Okay.
talked. Okay.
I didn't know if you summarized. That's because it's not a
No,
question, so I don't know what they're asking. I'm not trying to be nitpicky. It's just
neither was all things insurance. ...
All right.
So I take notes when I say someone's contact information. In like the note section, I'll be like, okay, I met them at church and their husband's name is this, or the kid's name is this, or they're from Colorado. But that's how I remember things. Another thing I will just say, there is no shame in asking them for their name again, or say, remind me of your name again. You don't necessarily have to say, remind me of how we met, because that's could hurt their feelings. But there's absolutely no shame in like, okay, I remember you, but I don't remember your name. Can you remind me of your name? And go from there. It's whenever you're like, oh, like I've had people be like, yeah, we never met, and Nick's gonna be like, how do you know that they were being mean to you? Because I know girls, and
Okay.
even the people.
You're
No,
going off.
wait, no. I would say like even I know of a specific scenario, and the person I was with was like, that was so rude. There are just ways to handle it. My point is that don't be afraid to ask them their name again. Just like, remind me of your name again, or say, so nice to see you. Because you don't have to say like, oh, so nice to meet you, as in it's the first time, but so nice to see you, check mark.
Okay. I agree with that. I think that something you're discounting is that you have a very good memory naturally, and I disagree that you taking notes is the only reason you remember those things.
I have trouble with names, even to the point where like I'm talking. I think because I have somewhat social anxiety, I'm focusing on you very much. That doesn't make sense. I'm getting nervous right now. I have social anxiety, and so
Okay.
I am focusing on the person at hand and the topic to the point where they will introduce themselves to me, and it will go in one ear and out the other, and I forget their name. But I'm having a real conversation with them, and so it's not as easy for me to remember people's names. I'll remember what they look like or a scenario.
Okay, so let me give you an example based on the example you just gave me. If I remember one or two things about you, that's a great day if I've just met you. You rattled off like 5 or 6 that you remember enough to take notes on after that person's left. I'm saying that is a skill that you have that's not directly related to note taking.
Sure, it's how I remember. It's like the database that you call my brain.
Yeah,
like
that's what I'm complimenting you on, is that you have that ability.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just saying that note taking is a great idea. You also have this extra thing. So the reason I'm bringing that up, not only to compliment you, is if this is actually a question about who should be responsible for this, I would lean into who has those skills, right? So if you're going to make this a card, or make this like, I don't know, your version of a card, however you want to call it, like I do lean on you. I don't expect you to know, but like if I don't know, I assume you will. And if you don't, I'm not upset, but you're the one that's better at it than me. So this kind of speaks to earlier, you talking about how you distribute cards well. Lean into the skill sets as well as the preferences of each person. Like if you're better at this and it doesn't make you uncomfortable, maybe this is a card for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I enjoy, I mean, nobody enjoys this, but if I enjoy pushing back on the insurance companies when I need to, maybe that's my card, like, and I have some skills to do it. Maybe that's my card. That's what I'm leaning into.
I would also say like, perhaps divide it equally. I think it's something that everybody should strive for. But also, if it's your friend, like there's some people who I've met through you, and later I'm like, oh shoot, what was his wife's name? And you may not remember, which is fine. But then I'll ask somebody else or whatever. But I think if it's your friends, like on your side, if you want to divide it evenly, I mean, it's not about being even, but if you want to divide it in a way that works, that could be an option for you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We can't talk about invisible work without talking about laundry, because your clothes just doesn't appear in your closet unless you're a very, very lucky human being. We actually do use a laundry service, but that's actually not what today is about. We are going to talk about Lunia, which I happen to be wearing right now in the color Glade Green. This was not on purpose because...
Looks very nice, babe.
Thank you. If you're on YouTube, you can get catch a gander. But it's the long sleeve pant pajama set, 100% silk, and it is so cozy. I'm actually wearing it with jeans right now. So keep in mind that the silk is very versatile, but most of all, it is machine washable, which makes luxury so convenient. You can get 15% off your first Lunia order with code
BGMAD.
So try it out and let us know what you think. They've got a ton of great fall new arrivals, including this Glade Green set. They've got a slope teal. I could go on, but there's some stuff that I'm not allowed to share yet. So anyway, check them out. You'll love it.
And stay tuned for the stuff she's not allowed to share yet.
Oh, yeah. Okay, the next question was the family calendar. So they listed play dates, appointments, birthdays, etc. So first of all, Fair Play divides those differently. Appointments are different than birthday parties, and they're different card, excuse me. And so I think that that's an easy way to, I mean, you might hold both of the cards, but those are separate topics. And so that's the first thing I would do is keep those separately. As far as appointments for us, though, there are sometimes I'm like, okay, Nick, make this appointment or I'm going to make it for you. And it's because I care about your health and I want you to be healthy, not as in like, oh, why aren't you doing it type of scenario. But for the most part, I will say we make our own appointments.
So this is my preference. I didn't write this book. I don't think a calendar should be owned by somebody. If it's a personal calendar, it should be owned by you. If it's a family calendar, I don't think there's one owner for that because that inherently flies against the need for a shared calendar. So I'm agreeing with you. We shouldn't distribute who owns the calendar. We should distribute who owns specific events. And our minimum standard of care is that the events you own are on the calendar so that your family's aware of them and you're transparent. So like if I own the medical care card and the medical appointments card for our family and the kids, I should be using my calendar, our family calendar, as a tool to show you these are the appointments we've made, not from an accountability perspective, but from a transparency and visibility perspective.
Yeah,
right?
This is a little bit separate, but kind of the same. One of the examples they gave in the book was about school paperwork. So whether it's a form to be filled out or, a permission slip, it should be done by the same parent or owned by the same parent. And it gave the example of two parents both filled out the allergy form and it was online and they both filled it out. And the problem was that they had differing answers. And with something like a peanut allergy, you need to know what's happening. And so because they both did it and one was wrong or they didn't match up, they then had to hand deliver to the school the allergy form and have it signed by the both of them. So it created a lot of extra work, which I think is a great example for having CPE or total task transfer.
Yeah. So instead of one person owning that task once, it took 3 times as long and took 2 people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just because there wasn't ownership.
Yeah. So I think you have to figure out what makes sense for you as far as play dates go. Who's the person who's usually going on them? I feel like that makes sense. I don't know.
So let's lean on the fair play recommendation here because you and I haven't done this yet, right? So like I think I agree, modify the cards as you see fit for your family, but I don't think I'm not trying to tell you you're wrong. I don't think do what's best for you is a good recommendation because I think that's going to result.
Do what's best for your family, not you as a person.
Sure, but like they split it up like medical appointments and calendars, friend appointments, like play dates and sleepovers. Like there are very direct things that are specifically separate. So I just don't want us to suggest that those things should be split up if you want to, because that kind of flies in the face of the system.
Okay, so I agree with you, but my question is, okay, so you're at school pickup and Cypress's friend asked to have a play date. Do you say, oh, let me check with my wife or let me check our calendar or how do you go from that? Instead of just being like, oh, look, yeah, the calendar's free. I need to get back to you. How do you handle that?
Well, I mean, that's a very specific scenario, but you would say, yeah, let me throw it on the calendar. I got to check with my wife.
Yeah.
Not because the wife is the person who makes the decisions for you, but I would argue even if you're the owner, you should do that, right? Yeah. Like if I'm owning friend appointments and that's my card, I can just throw things on, but I think it's also my job to talk to you about it and make sure, hey, those are people you want to spend time with.
Yeah.
You have the mental capacity to give that day, right? So like I'm still owning the conception, planning, and execution of all of it, but it doesn't mean your input isn't valid and necessary. I should be pursuing. So yeah, in your scenario, yeah, I mean, you be transparent about that. I think that's something I've learned in my 30s, that you like have to be comfortable with people doing that to you in responses, especially people who are in couples. It's a normal thing. It's a normal thing for me to hear an invite and say, let me talk to Lauren and get back to you. That's not weird. And it's also not a no, right? That's okay. And we should be comfortable seeing that kind of communication the other side.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this in relation to us and some things that we do. And so one thing, I was having dinner with friends, and I said, and I wasn't late, but I was just right on time, and they were there before me. And I was like, oh, hold on, let me text Nick and make sure that he knows I made it. And they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, we text each other when we arrive at where we're going. And they're kind of like, oh, not that they thought it was bad, but I guess a lot of people don't do that. And I think that's our way of being like, hey, I made it. I'm safe, number one. But two, also like, I'm thinking about you. I'm connected to you, even though I'm apart.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good thing.
But something that we not struggle with, but we have a family calendar that we have. It's a yellow on my phone. I don't know what color it is on yours, that I'll look and see.
This is not reasonable, but it drives me nuts that our colors are different on the shared
What's your
calendar. It's like a red, light red.
Oh,
I'm not saying mine's right. I'm just
You're
saying
welcome to switch to
my brain tells, oh, you're not welcome to switch to red. My brain tells me that they are different calendars. That's why it's frustrating.
Oh, interesting. So we have a shared calendar, and so like, yeah, he has his own work calendar. I have my own one, but whenever, whether it be a babysitting shift or a nanny shift, or I'm going somewhere, we'll put like Lauren facial or something like that, or Lauren girls night out. And there are some times where Nick's like, oh, so and so asked me to hang out on this day, and I'm like, okay, well, they're asking you to hang out because I'm hanging out with their significant other, and you're gonna have to get babysitter coverage if you want to do this thing away from the home with them, because this is already on the calendar. To where it is, I'm not mad about it, but sometimes it's frustrating for me. Of like, one, I told you about it the other week, which is okay that you forgot that this is on the calendar. It's on the calendar so you can see it, and then you're asking me, or telling me rather, and then I feel bad because I feel like I'm taking time away from your friend. So I'm just saying this is a very real scenario for people. It's not like an open wound for me, but it is something that I think about sometimes.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Can we talk about what?
Can we talk about what you just brought up?
Yeah.
Why does it make you frustrated that I ask you?
Because it makes me feel like you don't listen to me, or are not paying attention, and we have a calendar, so I don't understand the disconnect.
When I say, oh, this person asked me to do something, do you hear, I should go check the calendar for him and he's asking me if it's okay and I'm accepting the burden?
Not maybe sometimes, but more so just like, why didn't you check the calendar? And also, why didn't you listen to me when I told you?
So I don't think that you know this, so I'm just going to say it. When I get an invite, my knee-jerk reaction, if it involves you or any necessary childcare or any distribution of responsibilities, which is most of our life right now, I just tell you I've gotten the invite. I have no expectation that we're free, that you're looking to see if we're free, that you're giving me an answer of whether I should go or not. Sometimes I'll directly ask, like, hey, do you think this is cool? But when I've done that, I've also usually checked the calendar. I think the times you're talking about are when I'm just telling you, hey, I got asked to do this thing. Most of the time I'm doing that to give you the information that I've received a request. I'm not asking you to take the burden of something. I'm really kind of putting a pin in it so we can talk about it later. And I do expect of myself that I use our shared calendar. That's not an unreasonable expectation. I think you're taking the burden more than you should, and you already admitted it makes you feel bad when I'm not pressuring you for anything. You're taking on that responsibility yourself just by reading my request.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, and I will say it's not a 100% of the time for you. It's happened enough to where I wanted to bring it up because I think that is some people's reality.
Yeah, because like as an example, somebody asked me to do something that sounds really cool. My first thought is not, I wonder if I'm available, especially if I'm busy. My first thought is like, oh, what a cool thing, or what a cool invite. And the first person I think of to tell about that is you. So in the same way that a no is a complete sentence, oh, that's cool, or not responding, those are all acceptable. I'm not asking you to accept any burden.
Okay. So
my hope was that was a happy thing for you to hear. I can't tell if you liked it.
I liked what you said. I think that it sometimes still makes me feel a certain way, but I'm not mad about it.
What I'm asking is if that is me who is making you feel that way, or if you are accepting more of a burden than I'm asking you to, and that's what's making you feel that way.
Well, you can't make me feel any type of way. It's I'm in control of my actions or my feelings. Uh, but it does make me feel like sometimes you don't care.
Well,
So,
hopefully that will feel different in the future when now you hopefully understand and remember with your amazing memory that I'm usually just telling you something to tell you.
okay, cool. Thank you. So this kind of goes into the
And
next
remember that I care
section.
about you enough for you to be the first person I tell about cool things that are happening in my
Oh,
life and cool things that I'm asked to participate in.
cool. Thank you. I feel honored. Okay, so the next part is weaponized incompetence and willful ignorance. I know, big words, lots of meaning here, but I have a clip from Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn in the breakup back in 2006. And
I like that
basically,
movie.
basically, she's made dinner and she says to, you can watch it, you should watch it. It's a short clip, but she's made dinner and she's like, I wish you would just come and do the dishes. And he's like, okay, guess I can come do the dishes. She's like, well, I was just making the dinner. Like, it'd be nice if you came and did the dishes. And he's like, I can do the dishes. And she's like, I don't want you to do the dishes. I want you to want to do the dishes. And it goes on and on. But basically, that is he's a poster child in this movie for weaponized incompetence. I'll also share an Instagram post from In Case You Want to Grow Today. And it basically talks about weaponized incompetence and willful ignorance. Basically, the person is demonstrating helplessness and pretends to not be able to do something in order to avoid certain tasks or responsibilities. It can be seen as a form of gaslighting. I'm not good at it. It's your area of expertise. I have no idea. Or they do it so poorly where they don't have to. But basically, it's when typically it's the guy in examples, especially in movies, but they want a mom, not a partner. Moms do a lot, and they don't want to have to be equal or share equity in something, like things to do in a relationship.
I don't like these terms. I know you didn't come up with them, but I think they carry with them an assumption that there is an intentional offense towards the other person.
Well, the willful ignorance is not intentional.
Okay, would you say that the word weaponized carries with it intent?
Yes, because the weaponized incompetence is they're doing it on purpose.
That is exactly what I'm saying is not usually the case.
Oh,
Okay,
that is
so
the case for a lot of people. You do not like this. It is the case.
hold on. Go with me. It is ignorance on Vince Vaughn's part that he's not doing the dishes, especially when his wife has already cooked. He should be thinking about it. He should be trying to help. I agree with that. He's not weaponizing it. He's not trying to hurt her and not doing it. He just needs to be more considerate. I agree with the second point. Weaponized is to me, weaponized says, I'm intentionally not doing it as to hurt my partner. That's weaponized.
It's not necessarily to hurt per se, but it is putting yourself over them so that they can.
I agree with that, but that's not weaponized. That could be selfishness.
So here, look at this. Weaponized incompetence. When a person consciously chooses to do something in a manner that is mirroring a sense of helplessness or unawareness so they can get out of a task and usually results in another person stepping in. That is exactly what Vince Vaughn was doing. It can look like not taking out this is all from In Case You Want to Grow Today, which I'll link. Not taking out the trash when it's overflowing and saying they didn't notice so they don't have to. Not handling a partner's feelings well when they're upset and the partner may know this results in a blowout if they share their feelings, so they stop sharing their feelings as to avoid it. Not cleaning things properly, like baby bottles, toothpaste in the sink, laundry, because they don't want to do the task in the first place. Willful ignorance. When someone chooses to not learn how to do something so that they don't have to do it, an activity or a task, simply because they don't want to acknowledge it. It can look like not knowing when the kids need to leave for school to be on time, not knowing where the spices are in the spice cabinet, not knowing how to cook something, not setting reminders on your phone if you have a hard time remembering things. They are both avoidance of a task or a need that has to be done, but one is the avoidance of the action while the other is the avoidance of the mental load.
So it's weaponized incompetence and willful ignorance, right?
Yeah, willful ignorance.
Not weaponized ignorance. I'm just clarifying.
Correct.
The notes have both weaponized. That's why I'm making sure. So I agree with the willful part. It's the weaponized part that I don't agree with. And I know that what you just read, that definition, in my opinion, supports what I'm saying, that those are intentional choices by the person as to put themselves over or hurt their partner. I'm saying, I think that most people are just not thinking about it. I'm not saying it's okay that they're not. They can be better. They can consider. But it's not a weapon if you're just sitting there being passive. That's different.
Okay. What about that your wife needs help, or let's switch it. It doesn't have to be the wife full time. Let's say you know that your husband needs help with the kids on the weekends, but you purposely don't have the monitor up, you don't set an alarm, and they have to do everything. It also makes me think a good example is Kevin Hart has a comedy special where he talks about if they find cat pee in the hallway and and that's funny, but that's a perfect example of like, I'm going to pretend like I didn't see it so I don't have to do it, but I know that it's there.
That's intentional. The knowledge that the husband needs help and choosing not to help, that's intentional. I agree with these terms in those situations. The assumption you're making here is that everybody knows and is choosing the path of I don't want to help.
No, I don't think everybody knows.
So, and like Vince Vaughn, great example. I understand the criticism that he should have already thought, hey, I should do the dishes. I should help out in some way. My wife's done a lot of work here today. Fully agree with that. When she said, hey, here's the need, no matter how angrily she said it, what did he do? Realized it needed to be done, stood up, and it doesn't matter if he's angry. Hold on, listen. And he was like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do it, right?
Okay, I think you're right. I think the problem here is there's an underlying problem. And it's like the man-child problem, which I do not want Cypress to be at all. And, I would want to help him. It's kind of like the book I mentioned earlier, The Gift of Failure. I want both of our children to be able to thrive on their own, but also think of others and not to the detriment of themselves, but just be able to be helpful and things like that. But a man-child is basically what Vince Vaughn is being in that. And he wants his mom.
I just sorry, go ahead. I just don't like the insulting language.
Okay.
Man-child? Is it okay to call, if a woman is criticizing, is it okay to call them nagging?
No, which is a great example because those men who are practicing weaponizing competence often will call the woman nagging for asking for help. So thank you for just backing it up into my point.
Okay, what do I say when we have an issue in this family? What do I usually say when it feels like we're being like combative towards each other?
I have no idea.
What do I say?
We're not ever like that.
What do I right, exactly. Spike the camera for that moment. If we're having an argument and there's a clear problem, what do I say when I'm talking about the problem? What do I remind you about the problem?
It's not about the nail.
Verb.
It's not about the pasta.
No. Okay. You're going to remember, but I'll remind you. There is a problem that is ours to help solve. It is not a Lauren problem. It is not a Nick problem. It's not something we're assigning to each other. There is an issue that's over here, separate from us, that we should work together to fix.
Okay.
We've had that conversation, right?
I think so.
I know it's now you're making me crazy because you have an amazing memory and you're pretending like that's never happened.
I tell people my memory after having children is a lot different, so I'd appreciate the grace.
Are you using weaponized incompetence right now?
No. I really honestly, I'm sure you said it, but I can't.
I talk about this all the time because you get very sensitive sometimes when I'm talking to you directly and you think, oh, he's mad at me. He thinks this problem is my fault. He's telling me I'm doing something wrong. And I have to remind you, no, I'm focused on fixing the issue. I'm not focused on assigning blame. The problem is over here in my head. It's not with you. I'm not yelling at you. I'm upset with the problem. I'm not upset with you.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's fix the problem. Right?
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at here is the insults and how we talk about the ways in which we're dealing with things. Those things matter. We talk about how words matter already in previous, right? So I'm not trying to nitpick and tell you that you're wrong, but I would prefer to say, hey, Vince has an opportunity to be more proactive. And I would prefer Cypress and Olive to say that. I don't want them to say he's being a man child. If a woman or a man is yelling at the other partner because they expected them to do something or whatever else, and they're yelling and insulting them and criticizing them loudly with insults, we shouldn't say that person is nagging, right? We should say that person probably can adjust their communication style a little bit. Don't we want to talk like that?
Yeah.
This is why I hate the weaponized part. Okay. It's mean. And
you're very specific about your words, which I can appreciate, but words do matter. Words do matter. Yeah.
I just stole that trademark.
Words matter. I like
I said
it.
TM. I stole a trademark.
I already see the logo.
It looks exactly like the Waste Management logo. Words, man.
I hope you're watching this on YouTube, everybody. Anyway, okay. I feel like we're kind of done with that section. Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have one last.
Let's move on. Yes, let's move on. I'm fine with that.
No, I feel like we flushed it out. So we have a question in our Ask BGMAD section, and it kind of dealt with mental load because I feel like you can feel guilt within the mental load of everything. But this person wrote in and said they were feeling guilty for having their kids grow up in a rental home, especially when seeing things on Instagram like wallpapered nurseries and stuff like that. And I think what they're asking is kind of how to overcome that guilt. Because they said it was very different from how they grew up in their parents' home. So, I mean,
this is not. Let me understand further. I know you didn't write this question. I think
I didn't write this question.
Okay. This is
nobody writes in. I make them up. No, just kidding. This was a written in question.
This question is not specific to the subject of this episode. True or false?
It was written in the mental load little box I put, and I think where it could live is that the guilt is a mental load that they bear. Okay.
Let me answer outside of the subject of this podcast because I'm struggling to see how that fits. Okay. I don't see what card that would be because for example, I don't think guilt should be a card, right? So you see what I'm saying?
Can you hold the guilt card for me?
Right.
So I don't have to
Can you feel all the guilt emotions in our family? Yeah.
You're Greek. It should be easy for you. Just take it from me, please.
Right. If you're feeling guilty about something, it means that you're feeling responsible for it. It also means that you're assuming it's a negative. So why are you feeling guilty about renting versus buying?
Because they felt guilty that their kids don't have like a home to grow up in like they did, and then also seeing, probably influencers.
I was asking. It was rhetorical. I should have said that. I'm sorry. I'm not saying don't answer. I'm saying I'm trying to challenge the asker to think about this.
Yeah.
Right. Because to me, renting and buying one is not better than the other. There are advantages in one area to some, there are advantages in other areas to the other, right? And the assumption that, or the guilt you're feeling is based on not having something that you think is inherently better.
Well, and I think that that's kind of how America has spoken, especially being in, living in LA, it's a little bit different, but when we lived in Texas, most people that we were friends with had a house and had one fairly early on, and we're here almost mid-30s and we do not own a house. And so I definitely understand that. I tell Nick every day to get me a backyard.
This is why I jokingly asked if you wrote this question.
No, okay. And a washing machine. And I don't know that I pictured my life like this, but so many people across the world live like this, and there's nothing wrong with it. I remember we were at Hatch by Brentwood Country Mart whenever I was pregnant. I love their clothes, and I still wear them even now that I'm not pregnant because they're just beautiful clothing. But we were there and we were checking out, and I was getting a dress because I hadn't announced that I was pregnant and I was going to a wedding and I needed it kind of loosey-goosey. But I remember talking with the sales associate, do you remember? And she was like, I don't remember how it came up when we were checking out, but she said, yeah, most people, I think she may have been from Europe or something like that. She's like, especially in Europe, like they don't have these grandiose homes. Like people live together, family units, like even extended family live together, and they're not in these
Yeah.
ginormous homes. People share rooms and things like that. It's not what Instagram seems. So I understand it, and I want that too. I'm sorry that you feel guilty about it.
And to clarify, I think it's okay to want something. I'm not trying
Yeah.
to say like if one of your goals is to own or to have more space, that's great. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think the problem is when you assume that your current situation is somehow worse and detrimental. You know, people can
Yeah.
create amazing lives for their families and their kids in very little space with very, very little money, and a lot of them do. So
And I think I feel guilty in the sense of like not having a backyard, whether it's for Dino, our dog, or for myself to just pop out back, or for Cypress and Olive just to have an enclosed space to where they can roam. And so I do kind of feel guilt in that. I feel like being in
if we
LA, it's
lived
a little
in,
bit easier to feel that because it's a lot, most
sure,
people don't have it.
sure.
But
If we
yeah.
lived in middle America away from the oceans, would you feel guilty that you're taking the beach away from your kids?
No, because I feel like that's not something everybody has.
Something everybody that lives near the coast has, which is most of this country. Most of this country lives on the west and east coast. Most.
Why do I feel like singing Texas, our Texas, all hail the mighty state? I can sing all the Texas songs. Thanks, Mom.
There are a lot of people in Texas, but I mean,
But I guess there's a coast there.
yeah. Do you see what
You
I'm
wanna
so
move to
like?
Galveston, Nick?
What I'm hearing, and I don't disagree with you. No, I don't. Absolutely not. Do I want to move to Galveston? No offense, Galveston. There are just houses that are getting taken away there, like by the water.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
I lost my point. Oh, I agree with you that I want a backyard. I would love for our kids to have a backyard. Do I think that they have a worse life because they don't have one? No. So another scenario, if we could only afford a 1-bedroom instead of a 2, and we still had the twins. Scary, right? A lot of people deal with that. A lot. So like, are you worse off because we don't have that extra bedroom? It's okay to want it. I'm not trying to challenge you. I'm challenging the question asker here. It's okay to want it, but if you allow yourself to think that your current situation is somehow detrimental, that's probably not healthy for you.
Yeah. I would definitely, it's okay to mute people on Instagram, things like that. It's not real life. I'd say most people don't have beautifully constructed, put together homes. I know it doesn't help. Like I honestly, this is another thing you could do whenever we get is it Our House or ARHAUS or whoever, just Restoration Hardware magazines or whatever.
Oh, got
I'm gonna
it.
be really honest. I throw it in the trash or recycle. I throw it in the recycle because I don't even want to look at it. It's like my out of the budget wedding dress. I don't want to try the out of the budget wedding dress on. I just want to look at what we have because that helps me not feel guilty or lust over things. So yeah, I think that's it.
Well, hold on. I just wonder, how cool would it be to be able to see those things and think, wow, that's awesome for them?
Yes, that would be great.
I agree with you. Find your own boundaries, throw away what you need to, block people on Instagram that are making you feel bad. I'm not saying no to that. I'm just saying, what if instead of feeling guilty, you felt happy for them? Because there is always somebody else in the world that looks at your situation and feels like they're not enough because they don't have what you have.
Yeah,
and your intent, I'm sure, in sharing things is not to make them feel bad.
But I also think that you can be happy for them and feel kind of sad for yourself at the same time. Living in the gray.
I don't think that's, yes, you can be. You're right, you can be. I don't think that that is healthy. I'm not trying to say you're doing something wrong if you're feeling that way. I think that's a natural feeling. But I think if you are sad, that sadness or guilt is rooted in you thinking you don't have enough, or you thinking that your situation is detrimental to your family and your kids.
And I think in this case, it was in regard to their children.
Sure.
And they felt bad for their kids, maybe not for themselves.
So maybe the line is different for you and I. For me, we both want a backyard, to get to that example, right? I can't let myself feel bad about not having one. because that's a big slippery slope for me. So I'm like, if I see a
Yeah.
backyard, I do want it. I'm like, that's awesome. But I don't let it make me feel bad, because that gets into a slippery slope of what else do we not have? How else are we hurting our kids? How else is our life terrible? Like, it's just a bad chain reaction that I don't like to get into.
I get it. I think it's similar in the way that I have some anxieties and things like that, that I describe it as I keep the door shut. I
Yeah.
know that the door is there. I cannot go in the door, and I know that it's there. And I keep it at bay, but it's there. But I can't go down that road. And so maybe that's what you have to do. But also, if you want to talk about money, episode 20, we talked about money. So, and obviously we're not amazing at it, but it are some thought-probing thoughts, I guess, questions, things to think about if that's something you're saving for. But overall, just for this episode, we wanted to bring light to this topic, maybe to make you feel validated, or maybe you need to send this podcast episode along to a friend or family member who needs a push in the right direction.
Are you telling them to weaponize our podcast?
No, maybe you send a different episode first and you're like, oh, maybe you should listen to this one. But also read the book. There's a ton, like, I know we touched on it, but there's a ton of stuff in Fair Play that we didn't even talk about, like Unicorn Time, which is a huge part of the book, and to the point where she made another book just on Unicorn Time. The point is to not do this so that you can check things off, but so that you can properly manage your household and also have special time to yourself to grow as a person and a human being, not just to get things done. There will always be a laundry list, so make sure to carve out some time for you.
Yeah. And if you'd be interested to know, I kind of felt the way I was just joking about when you recommended the book to me. I know you didn't tell me I was doing something wrong, but in some cases when you were recommending it, it felt like, oh, this is something you need to read. Kind of like if somebody said, like, gives you a book that's like
Self-help.
how to stop dressing ugly or something, like that's an extreme example, but
Styling for dummies.
Yeah. That's why I was laughing when you were telling people recommending them to send the podcast. Please send the podcast, but don't weaponize it. I'm not saying you were. Let me reframe what I'm saying, and I didn't finish my point, is that it felt that way when you were recommending it to me. And after reading it, I know that was me not being comfortable reading a book that could challenge me. It wasn't you telling me that I needed to change.
Yeah.
I know that.
Great. I'm so glad, because honestly, I just thought the book was so good. I took a whole slew of notes on it, and I would recommend it. Could change your life.
Change your life. Oh, I don't know if you're going to say this later, even though the podcast is almost done. We have not fully implemented this system. That's probably worthy of saying.
Yeah.
It's super interesting. I just recently finished the book. Lauren finished a little while before she recommended it to me. We're going to have to talk about this again. Maybe it's not another episode, but like, I think in the same way we're going to check in with each other after a little bit of time, we should probably check back in here, even if it's a little segment, and talk about whether we found it helpful or not. It seems like it's going to be very helpful.
Yeah. I'm excited. Also, I just have to say, if you're on YouTube, it looks like we're celebrating spooky season already. Nick and I wanted to finish this episode, and like I said, stuff got in the way, so we're kind of in the dark. So you get to see bright sunshine and the moonlight on our faces.
Are you feeling guilty that we don't have
I'm
light?
feeling a little guilty, yeah. I'm feeling a little guilty, but I also feel good in that we're bringing this episode and we didn't let anything stop us from bringing it to you.
No matter how dark we look, we're bringing the episode to light.
Oh, I like it. So thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, send it to a friend or leave a comment. Give us a 5-star rating. You know what to do. We would love to see it. And yeah, we appreciate you growing with us. Follow along with us at boygirlmomdot.com or our website, boygirlmom.com. We also send out a newsletter every Wednesday morning, usually morning, where I actually give some behind the scenes things and discuss other things I don't discuss anywhere else. So sign up for that too. It's at the bottom of the webpage, and we'll get it in your inbox.
Thanks for listening.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Boy, girl, mom, and dad. Gotta wash those butts together. It's a trip, but we'll guide you through with tips and tricks for boys and girls too.